Hello world, welcome to CyberGate Studio. My name is Marcel with CyberGate Studio. Today we're going to talk about the MacBook Pro 2016 again. This is kind of a re-review because the first time I did it, I had a defective unit. So I'm going to put a link in the description and probably one of those little info cards to link you back to the other video. Take a look at that one first because a lot of what I said is true. But let's go ahead and get in with kind of the new comments first. Number one, battery life is roughly 3 hours while video editing, so something that is quite taxing. It's rendering the video at the same time. That's using Final Cut Pro and Premiere. They're kind of similar as far as battery life, as far as I experienced. It's about 3 hours, like I said. Depends on kind of how much downtime you have and minimizing and going back to it. It's about the same as my Surface Pro 4, put it that way. The performance was roughly the same between the MacBook Pro and the Surface Pro 4. So I guess that goes to show how much better Apple is doing with the hardware as far as their operating system and how they go together, because this is an i5 and only 8 gigs of RAM, whereas my Surface is 16 gigs and an i7 processor. So there's some weaknesses there as far as the Surface is concerned, but otherwise, I mean, you kind of pay for that with the form factor and not having to use Mac OS. As far as updates from my previous review, I should definitely say that number one, software issues have been largely addressed by Apple and their software updates. They've done a pretty good job on that. There's a little bit, every so often there's little things like Final Cut Pro will crash randomly. It's not necessarily the operating system's fault, that's just that software. But for, I didn't test Boot Camp this time, so I didn't have any experiences that way, but in general, software issues are largely addressed, and battery life seemed pretty solid as far as what I expected. It's stupid thin. There's not a lot of room for battery, so that's just a sacrifice Apple is willing to make. The cooling performance of this device, of the MacBook Pro, was really left me wanting. It was so hot, the chassis got so hot that every time I tried to type on it, it would be uncomfortable with my fingers. I couldn't put it on my lap. It was ridiculous. And the MacBook Pro 2015, that video, which I'll again link here if you want to watch that definitely had it and had the fan blowing like a jet engine. So that I know was just poor thermal performance. But the MacBook Pro 2016 seemed to do pretty okay, just heated up a lot. Well, I noted that it was incredibly quiet. Turns out it's defective. So I didn't have an operating cooling fan on the first device I got. So this one does have a cooling fan. I'll be honest, I was struggling to get it to really go full tilt. I had to edit for several hours before this thing really started cooling, and it did get pretty warm. And then as soon as that fan turned on, the thing got cold again. I mean, it's incredible. I'm very impressed with Apple's cooling performance in this thing. I think that means I need to adjust my final statement in my other video. The MacBook Pro, it's actually very, very good device to buy. If you are somebody who's looking to get into that premium device realm, something super portable, and you're thinking between a Windows laptop or especially the 13-inch size, or a Surface Pro 4 or something. I mean, it really depends on your budget. I bought it for $1,300 from Best Buy. Comparing against my Surface Pro 4, which I got for around $1,600 from Best Buy, they have the same performance. And so you're going to save $300 with this device. That's still the 256 gigs of internal SSD storage. This storage is faster. Really the only thing you're giving up is the ability for touchscreen. You're having the OS change around and your stylus input, but these have the Thunderbolt 3, which may or may not be a selling point. Depends on what you do and what you use. If you're buying a new kit altogether, it's awesome. Thunderbolt 3, USB-C is definitely the way to go. But if you're trying to slot this into your existing workflow, where you have a bunch of other USB devices, it'll be frustrating at first, but eventually things are going to be moving in that direction anyway. Things are already moving in that direction, so I'm not going to count this as a downside. I do wish I had an SD card slot like everybody else thinks, but otherwise, I'm going to be... I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm actually returning this device because I already have the Surface Pro 4 and I can't return that. But this is actually a very good value if you want to look at it from a premium laptop standpoint. Now obviously you can get more for your money if you build a desktop, if you buy a cheaper, more plastic type laptop that can work just fine for you, potentially. But if you want that premium, beautiful engineering, that solid feel, insanely fast SSD, and or just want Apple, then this is actually a very, very good value when you compare to the other premium brands. So keep that in mind when you're choosing what you want. Honestly, unless you need a computer right now, if you could hold out till the end of the year, maybe even like a year from now, I'm sure they'll release another iteration to the MacBook, in which case that one will be even better, especially with Kaby Lake's performance. The battery life will probably get better. Performance may stay roughly the same, but battery life will get better the longer you wait. So that's my 2 cents. I hope that answers some of your questions and concerns, especially if you've seen my other video already and you commented on that. I hope this kind of helps a little bit paint a different picture now that I have actual functioning hardware. And expect a similar video for the iPad Pro coming pretty soon. But go ahead and comment down below. What do you think? Did you buy the MacBook? What do you think of this newer version? And did you have any of the same thermal issues or really just cooling performance in a good or bad way? Let me know out here in the comments below. And while you're down there, like and subscribe for more content coming your way.